Winning begins with inner alignment. Because every action you take, every choice you make, and every direction you pursue is rooted in the internal world you cultivate. Most people try to win by pushing harder on the outside, forcing outcomes, chasing results, and trying to outwork every obstacle. But this approach often leads to exhaustion, frustration, and confusion because the internal foundation is weak. When the inner world is chaotic, the outer world reflects that chaos. When the mind is divided, your efforts scatter. But when your inner world becomes harmonious, your values, intentions, and actions pointing in the same direction, you unlock a kind of power that does not need pressure or force to succeed. It becomes natural. It becomes steady. It becomes inevitable. Inner alignment begins with clarity. You must know what you value, what you stand for, and what your life is supposed to express. Without this clarity, you move through life reacting rather than choosing, drifting rather than directing. When you are unclear internally, even opportunities become confusing because you don't know which ones align with your purpose. But once you define your values, you start seeing the world through a sharper lens. You stop wasting energy on things that pull you away from your essence. You begin to move intentionally, not impulsively. When intention becomes clear, the next step is bringing your actions into harmony with that intention. Many people say they want growth, but they cling to habits that keep them stagnant. They say they want discipline, but they continue choosing comfort. They say they want peace, but they maintain behaviors that create conflict within themselves. This inner contradiction is what prevents progress. It is like trying to walk in two directions at the same time. Inner alignment dissolves that contradiction. It invites you to act according to the life you claim to desire. It turns lofty ideals into daily behaviors. This does not mean perfection. Alignment is not about never slipping. It is about repeatedly returning to the path after you slip. Every day becomes a conscious recalibration. You recognize the moments when your thoughts wander, when distractions tempt you, when old patterns reappear. Instead of judging yourself, you gently realign. This process of continuous correction is what builds true strength. It trains the mind to stay centered, focused, and intentional. A mind aligned with its values also becomes quieter, not empty, but peaceful. It stops arguing with itself. It stops questioning every decision. It stops fighting between desire and discipline. This silence is not weakness, it is clarity, and from clarity, powerful action arises. You no longer chase everything because your internal compass tells you what matters and what does not. You no longer feel pulled in 100 directions because the inner path is straight. This quiet focus is one of the greatest advantages a person can develop. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary progress. Discipline becomes easier when inner alignment is present. Instead of forcing yourself to act, your actions flow from who you are becoming. Discipline is not a punishment, but a natural extension of your identity. When your values and actions match, discipline becomes an expression of integrity. You do what needs to be done because it aligns with the person you choose to be, not because someone is watching, not because you fear failure, but because your internal world has already decided the direction. The outer behavior simply follows. This is why great achievements often appear effortless to outsiders. They see only the calm, steady actions, not the years of internal alignment that made those actions possible. When the mind is stable, actions do not need to be dramatic. When intention is clear, effort does not need to be forced. When values guide you, progress unfolds naturally. Inner alignment also transforms how you respond to challenges. A misaligned mind sees obstacles as threats and becomes reactive, frustrated, anxious, overwhelmed. But an aligned mind sees challenges as information. Instead of panicking, it asks, what is this situation teaching me about my direction? Obstacles become mirrors, showing you where more alignment is needed. Setbacks become signals pointing to areas of growth. This perspective dissolves the fear that normally comes with difficult situations. You begin to trust yourself more deeply because your reasoning is clear and your actions are intentional. When your inner world is aligned, you also develop resilience, not the loud, aggressive resilience that resists everything, but the calm resilience that bends without breaking. You are less influenced by external opinions because your direction is not borrowed, it is chosen. You are less shaken by uncertainty because your foundation does not depend on circumstances. You become stable, grounded, and consistent. This inner stability is what allows people to win over long periods, not just in temporary bursts. Another powerful aspect of inner alignment is that it naturally shapes your environment. People think external change creates internal change, but it is often the opposite. When you change internally, you begin to attract experiences, relationships, and opportunities that resonate with your state of mind. You become more selective with your time, more intentional with your friendships, and more aware of what drains or strengthens you. Your environment shifts because your choices shift. Your choices shift because your values guide them. This is why inner alignment is the root of outer success. The external world eventually matches the internal one. Inner alignment also brings a sense of meaning to your journey. When your actions reflect your values, every step feels purposeful. Even simple tasks gain significance because they contribute to the larger direction of your life. This sense of purpose fuels motivation more deeply than temporary inspiration ever could. Purpose sustains you on difficult days. Purpose sharpens your focus. Purpose keeps you moving even when progress is slow. Winning, then, becomes not a distant goal, but a natural outcome. It is not something you chase. It is something you grow into. It is the reflection of an inner system that is coherent, stable, and intentional. When your values shape your intentions, and your intentions shape your actions, the world responds. It may not happen instantly, but it happens inevitably. This is why people who rely only on external effort often burn out, while those who cultivate inner alignment thrive for years, even decades. Effort alone cannot sustain you. Alignment can. A misaligned mind needs constant motivation. An aligned mind needs only direction. So if you wish to win, begin here, within. Not with force, but with clarity. Not with pressure, but with intention. Not with desperation, but with discipline. Transform the inner world, and the outer world will follow. Winning is not achieved by overpowering life. It is achieved by aligning with the deepest truth of who you are and acting from that truth again and again. When the inner world becomes orderly, the outer world eventually has no choice but to reflect that order back to you. Consistency is more powerful than intensity because intensity relies on emotion, but consistency relies on commitment. Anyone can act with force for a moment. Anyone can be inspired for a day. Anyone can push themselves through a short burst of motivation. But the results that truly change a person's life do not come from these occasional peaks. They come from showing up again and again, especially when the excitement fades. Consistency is steady. It does not depend on perfect conditions or high energy. It does not require the right mood. It simply asks you to continue. And that continuation is what reshapes your character from the inside out. When people chase intensity, they chase moments. They want a sudden breakthrough, a dramatic shift, an overnight transformation. But breakthroughs are not created by intensity. Breakthroughs are revealed by consistency. The dramatic shift people desire is usually the visible result of thousands of small, invisible actions. Actions that seem too simple to matter at the time. Like water dripping on a stone. One drop means nothing, but 1,000 drops carve a path. 1,000,000 drops reshape the stone entirely. This is the power of accumulation. This is the power of daily effort. Consistency builds identity. When you repeat an action often enough, it becomes part of who you are. If you train every day, you become someone who trains. If you learn every day, you become someone who seeks knowledge. If you practice discipline in small decisions, you become someone who lives with discipline in larger ones. Identity is not formed by occasional intensity. Identity is shaped by repeated choices. Every repetition reinforces the message you send to yourself. This is the kind of person I am becoming. Over time, you no longer force the behavior. It becomes natural. This is why small actions are not small. They are signals. Every time you show up, Even in a minor way, you strengthen the identity that moves you forward. And once identity becomes strong, habits become automatic. You no longer need motivation to continue. Your behavior flows from who you believe yourself to be. At this point, consistency becomes self-sustaining. Intensity is fueled by emotion. Consistency is fueled by values. Emotion fluctuates. Values endure. If you depend on intensity, your progress will rise and fall with your mood. But if you depend on consistency, your progress becomes steady and reliable. This steadiness is what separates those who succeed briefly from those who succeed continually. The beauty of consistency is that it does not require extraordinary effort. It requires manageable effort. People often fail not because their goals are too big, but because they try to reach those goals in one giant leap. They try to change everything at once. They try to force transformation. But the human mind does not sustain sudden, overwhelming change for long. Small, steady adjustments work because they respect the way growth naturally unfolds. They allow the mind and body to adapt, to integrate new behaviors slowly, until those behaviors become part of one's lifestyle. Another reason consistency is so powerful is that it creates momentum, one of the most valuable forces in personal growth. When you take small steps every day, momentum carries you forward, even on days you feel less capable. Consistency protects you from stagnation. It keeps your life moving even if only slightly, and movement, no matter how slow, prevents the heaviness that comes from inactivity. Once you stop, starting again requires far more energy. Consistency prevents this gap from forming. It also trains patience. In a world conditioned by instant gratification, patience becomes a rare strength. Consistency teaches you to trust the process rather than obsess over immediate results. It teaches you to focus on the action instead of the outcome. This shift in mindset reduces frustration and increases resilience. You begin to realize that progress is not always visible day to day, but it is always happening beneath the surface, quietly building toward a future breakthrough. Consistency also sharpens your focus. When you commit to something regularly, distractions lose their power. They cannot pull you away as easily because your path becomes familiar and grounded. The repeated practice trains your mind to return to the task even if it drifts. Over time, this enhances discipline and strengthens the ability to concentrate. These qualities are priceless because they influence every aspect of your life. Another reason consistency surpasses intensity is its relationship with trust. Trust in yourself. When you show up repeatedly, you begin to rely on your own word. You prove again and again that you can follow through. Many people live with self-doubt not because they are incapable, but because they break their own promises too often. Every broken promise weakens self-trust. Every consistent action strengthens it. Once you trust yourself, your confidence becomes real, not artificial. It is rooted in evidence, not wishful thinking. Progress built on consistency is also more stable. Intensity can lead to burnout. It can exhaust the mind and body. It can create a cycle of ups and downs, periods of extreme effort followed by periods of collapse. But consistency avoids this pattern by working with your energy, not against it. You do not drain yourself in one burst. You sustain yourself over a long journey. This sustainable approach is what leads to mastery. Not short-term effort, but long-term repetition. Mastery itself is quiet. It is created behind the scenes. It is formed through small adjustments, small improvements, small refinements repeated countless times. You cannot reach mastery through intensity alone. You cannot rush it or force it. You earn it through consistency, through showing up on days when inspiration is low, through practicing even when no one notices. The experts people admire are rarely the most intense. They are the most consistent. Consistency also reveals something deeper, whether you truly want something. If you only act when you feel excited, then the desire is shallow. But if you continue even when excitement fades, then the desire is genuine. Consistency exposes truth. It shows you your real priorities, not your imagined ones. In the end, Consistency shapes destiny because destiny is built from habits, and habits are built from repeated action. Your future is not crafted in grand moments. It is crafted in the small decisions you make each day. The things you do regularly have far more influence on your life than the things you do occasionally. If you want to grow, focus less on doing something intensely and more on doing it consistently. If you want to change, do not wait for motivation, create rhythm. If you want to transform your identity, repeat the behaviors that match the person you wish to become. Over time, these tiny steps accumulate into something powerful, stable, and lasting. And when you look back, you will realize that the real miracle was not a single extraordinary effort. The miracle was simply that you kept going. Mastery requires letting go of distractions because the mind is not designed to carry endless noise and still function at its highest capacity. Most people believe that the path to achievement is about constantly adding more tasks, more goals, more information, more intensity. But the deeper truth is that real mastery is a process of subtraction. It is the removal of the unnecessary, so the essential can finally be seen. The mind becomes powerful not when it is overloaded, but when it is focused. Focus cannot exist where distraction thrives. Distractions weaken the mind by scattering attention across too many directions. When attention is divided, energy is divided. When energy is divided, progress slows. The human mind is capable of extraordinary clarity, but only when it is not drowning in noise. Fear, comparison, ego, and the constant stimulation of the modern world act like fog. They blur perception and confuse direction. In this fog, even simple decisions become overwhelming. But when the fog is removed, clarity emerges, and with clarity comes the ability to act with precision. Fear is one of the first distractions that must be released. It occupies mental space and creates emotional tension. Fear makes you think about what could go wrong instead of what must be done. It magnifies obstacles and shrinks confidence. As long as fear dominates the mind, mastery remains distant because fear does not allow the mind to rest or focus. Letting go of fear does not mean ignoring danger. It means refusing to let imagined outcomes dictate your actions. When fear dissolves, your attention returns to the present moment, the only place mastery can be built. Comparison is another subtle but destructive distraction. When you compare yourself to others, you lose sight of your own path. You begin to measure your progress with someone else's timeline, someone else's strengths, someone else's journey. This robs you of internal focus. No two individuals have the same experiences, the same starting point, or the same purpose. Mastery requires attention to your own growth, your own rhythm, your own evolution. Comparison shifts your gaze outward, but mastery is always created inward first. When you stop comparing, you reclaim energy that was being wasted on insecurity and self-judgment. That energy can now be redirected toward practice, learning, and refinement. Ego is another form of distraction because it traps the mind in illusions. Illusions of being superior, illusions of already knowing enough, illusions of being above discipline. Ego interferes with learning because learning requires humility. It requires admitting what you do not yet understand. Ego also resists correction and criticism, even when these are necessary for improvement. True mastery cannot grow in a mind that is defensive or inflated. To move forward, you must be willing to release the ego's demand for validation. Mastery thrives in quiet humility, in the willingness to remain a student no matter how skilled you become. Modern distractions add even more layers of noise. Constant notifications, endless entertainment, emotional drama, and the pressure to remain connected all compete for mental space. The mind becomes overstimulated, restless, unable to settle. When the mind is restless, deep work becomes impossible. And without deep work, uninterrupted time spent practicing, thinking, or refining, mastery remains out of reach. Every distraction you remove strengthens your ability to enter states of focused concentration. This focus is where breakthroughs happen. It is where skill transforms from effortful to effortless. Letting go of distractions is not simply about removing external noise, it is also about clearing internal clutter. Thoughts that replay past mistakes, worries about the future, unnecessary regrets, and excessive desires all create internal friction. This friction prevents the mind from moving smoothly. Internal clutter consumes energy that could be invested in growth. As you let go of this inner noise, you create mental space. In this space, clarity emerges. You begin to perceive what is truly important. Clarity itself is a form of strength. When the mind becomes clear, decision-making becomes easier. You no longer waste time questioning every step. You no longer chase every opportunity that passes by, nor do you waste energy on things unrelated to your purpose. Clarity simplifies life, and when life is simplified, consistency becomes easier, discipline becomes lighter, and progress becomes faster. This is the hidden foundation of mastery, not talent, but clarity. With clarity, the right actions become obvious. You no longer feel lost because the path in front of you becomes visible. You can sense when something aligns with your purpose, and when it does not. You can prioritize without hesitation. You can say no without guilt. You can focus without struggle. This ability to know the next right step is one of the most powerful advantages a person can have. It removes the constant doubt that drains motivation. It eliminates the confusion that leads to wasted time. It turns your energy toward meaningful effort instead of scattered attempts. The process of letting go also teaches discipline. Every time you choose clarity over distraction, you strengthen your ability to stay committed. This disciplined focus compounds over time. Small periods of focused work become longer. Tasks that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Skills that once seemed unreachable become attainable. The mind adapts to this clean environment and begins to perform with greater efficiency. This is how mastery grows, not from chaotic effort, but from deliberate practice performed in a calm, focused state. Another benefit of releasing distractions is emotional balance. When the mind is filled with noise, emotions react intensely. You become easily frustrated, easily discouraged, easily overwhelmed. But as distractions fade, emotions become steadier. You develop patience because your mind is no longer pulled in conflicting directions. You develop confidence because clarity empowers action. Emotional stability is essential for mastery because it allows you to persist through challenges without being thrown off course. A balanced mind can endure difficulty without losing vision. Letting go of distractions also deepens awareness. With fewer mental filters, you begin to see your weaknesses and strengths more accurately. You can observe your habits, patterns, and reactions with greater honesty. This awareness is crucial because mastery requires self-correction. You must be able to see what needs refinement. A distracted mind cannot see clearly. It misinterprets experiences and makes decisions based on impulse rather than insight. As awareness increases, your ability to refine your craft increases with it. The act of removing distractions is not a one-time effort. It is a continual discipline, an ongoing practice of simplifying, focusing, and prioritizing. New distractions will always arise, both from within and from the world around you. The mind must be trained to recognize them quickly and release them without attachment. This continual process strengthens mental resilience and ensures that your energy stays directed toward what truly matters. Mastery is not about accumulating more skills than others. It is about refining a few meaningful skills to their highest expression. It is about committing deeply rather than broadly, and such depth cannot be reached in a distracted mind. When you let go of what weakens your attention, you create space for profound learning, deliberate practice, and true growth. You begin to experience moments where action flows effortlessly, where your skill, intention, and concentration merge into one. These moments are glimpses of mastery. They arise not from striving harder, but from focusing deeper. In the end, mastery is less about addition and more about subtraction. Subtract the noise, subtract the fear, subtract the comparison, subtract the ego, subtract the unnecessary commitments that drain your time and spirit. When you remove what does not belong, the essence of your potential becomes visible. With a clear mind and a focused heart, your path becomes unmistakable. The right actions reveal themselves not through force, but through clarity. And with clarity, mastery is no longer a distant dream. It becomes a natural unfolding. Discipline transforms struggle into strength because discipline reshapes the way you interpret difficulty. Most people view struggle as a sign that something is wrong, as a barrier that blocks progress, or as a punishment they must endure. But struggle is not an obstacle, it is a messenger. It reveals where you need to grow, where your limits still control you, and where your mind retreats when pressure appears. Without discipline, people meet struggle with avoidance. They escape, they pause, they hesitate. But when discipline is present, struggle becomes a training ground, an environment where character is shaped, skills are sharpened, and resilience is forged. Discipline changes your relationship with challenge. Instead of seeing hardship as something to fear, you begin to see it as something that prepares you. You realize that discomfort is not the enemy of progress, it is the initiator of it. Nothing meaningful is built in comfort. Comfort preserves what already exists, but growth requires friction, and that friction becomes valuable once discipline steps in. Discipline gives you the ability to continue even when the mind resists, even when emotions fluctuate, and even when the path becomes unclear. When discipline meets struggle, the struggle becomes training. Every moment of hardship then holds a lesson, not a threat. If a situation pushes your patience, discipline turns it into an opportunity to practice calmness. If a task demands endurance, discipline trains your persistence. If an experience challenges your confidence, discipline reinforces your courage through continued action. In this way, every difficulty becomes part of your development, not an interruption, but a contribution. This transformation begins internally. Discipline shapes the dialogue of the mind. Instead of reacting with, "This is too hard," discipline teaches you to ask, "What is this moment trying to develop within me?" This shift in perspective changes everything. It allows struggle to become purposeful. It allows pain to become informational. It allows obstacles to become fuel rather than friction. The moment your interpretation of struggle changes, your experience of it changes. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once felt like defeat becomes part of your progress. Discipline also gives structure to your energy. When faced with difficulty, undisciplined minds scatter. They panic, overthink, or surrender. Discipline focuses your energy into action. It prevents you from being overwhelmed by the magnitude of a challenge by breaking it into steps. One disciplined action leads to another, and over time, these actions accumulate into strength. Strength is not created in the absence of difficulty. It is created in the consistent engagement with it. The body, the mind, and the spirit all grow the same way, through controlled stress. Just as muscles grow through resistance, the mind grows through pressure. Discipline is the force that ensures you meet that pressure with intention instead of avoidance. Without discipline, pressure crushes potential. With discipline, pressure builds capability. This is why disciplined people appear calm under stress, not because they feel less struggle, but because they have trained with it. Another way discipline transforms struggle into strength is through patience. Patience is not passive. It is the quiet endurance of effort without needing immediate results. Struggle often feels heavy because people expect progress to be instant. When progress is not visible, they assume their efforts are failing. But discipline teaches you to remain steady, knowing that growth often takes place beneath the surface before it becomes visible. Patience protects the mind from frustration. It allows you to keep moving even when the reward has not yet revealed itself. And in the long term, patience becomes one of the greatest strengths you can cultivate. Awareness also deepens through discipline. When you approach struggle with awareness, you begin to see your patterns more clearly, where your mind collapses, where your emotions explode, where your discipline weakens. Instead of reacting blindly, you observe these moments. You understand them. And by understanding them, you can gradually change them. Awareness transforms struggle from chaos into information. It allows you to refine your behavior, improve your mindset, and elevate your actions. With each disciplined encounter, your self-awareness expands, and this awareness becomes a tool for navigating future difficulties with greater wisdom. Discipline strengthens resilience, the ability to return after being knocked down. Without discipline, setbacks create discouragement. With discipline, setbacks become feedback. Every failure teaches you something about the next attempt. Every obstacle shows you what needs refinement. Every moment of exhaustion tests your commitment. Resilience is not built when things go smoothly. It is built when everything feels heavy, yet you continue. Discipline is the inner force that pushes you forward in those moments when giving up feels easier. Over time, this resilience turns into confidence. Not the fragile confidence built on praise or success, but the deep, unshakable confidence that comes from repeatedly facing difficulty and surviving it. You begin to trust yourself. You trust your ability to endure, to adapt, to respond. This trust becomes a foundation that no external circumstance can easily break. And this kind of confidence is one of the greatest strengths any person can possess. Discipline also protects your purpose. When life becomes challenging, it is easy to drift away from your direction. Difficulty can distract you from your goals, weaken your motivation, or distort your clarity. Discipline acts like an anchor. It keeps you connected to your larger purpose even when conditions change. It prevents you from abandoning your mission due to temporary discomfort. By staying aligned with what matters, you make sure the struggle strengthens your path instead of derailing it. Life will always present challenges. This cannot be avoided. What can be chosen is how you respond. With discipline, each challenge becomes meaningful. Instead of weakening you, it shapes you. Instead of derailing your journey, it refines it. The disciplined mind knows that struggle is not a punishment, it is preparation. Every difficulty offers training for something greater. Every hardship prepares you for a future version of yourself. This is how one wins, not once, but continually. Victory is not a moment, it is a way of living. It is the ability to meet each challenge with steady discipline, to convert struggle into strength, and to allow adversity to shape you rather than stop you. Strength built through discipline is lasting. It does not disappear when circumstances shift. It remains with you, forming a foundation for everything you attempt. In the end, discipline does not remove struggle. It transforms it.